Hi, my name is Linda Forand and welcome to Animal Adventures! Today, we're going to learn all about birds of prey, how to take care of them, what to do if you find an injured one, all sorts of interesting things. So come along with me as we go and talk all about birds of prey with Tom Riccardi. Let's go!
Tom Riccardi. I live here in Conway, Massachusetts, and I run the Massachusetts Bird of Prey Rehab Facility, which is a small project I started back in the 1970s, and here I am still doing it today. And the focus of the project is to take in injured birds of prey, hawks, eagles, owls, falcons, mend the injury with the help of a good veterinarian, and release the birds back to the wild. This is not a hobby. It has to be a passion because it's a 24-hour a day job to keep these birds fed, healthy, and get them back, released back to the wild. Right now I have about 65 birds here, and about 50 of them are going to be released back to the wild. This year it's been really busy, and I usually average about 100 birds a year to come in. I do this all on my own. It's not a state or a federal project. It's non-profit, and as I said, all the expenses and things come out of my own pocket. So I do a lot of educational programs, and I can be reached here in Conway at Box 26, Conway, Mass. And my phone number is 413-369-4072. If anyone's interested in a school program, that's how I fund and take care of these birds, by doing educational programs using live birds. I'll come to schools. In most of New England, I'll go into New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and here in Massachusetts.
And do you have a website?
I'm really not into the electronics very much. I do have a small website, and it's just look on the Mass Bird of Prey, Raptor Rehabilitation, and my name will come up.
Oh, excellent. So that's another way just to be able to like Google, so like the Massachusetts Wildlife, right? And then your name will come up as rehabilitator.
Right.
And then tell me about, so like before you ended up being a rehabilitator, what was your background before that?
Very good. It's interesting because when I was a child, my focus, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with wildlife, especially birds, because I just love birds. I love nature. I like being in the outdoors. And unfortunately, today we're losing a lot of that. We're losing the outdoors. A lot of the children today have no concept of what it's all about. But I started off after I got out of the military. I worked with the State Department of Fish and Wildlife for a few years, and then I took the exam to become a state conservation or game warden. Today they're called environmental police officers, but I spent 38 years as a state conservation officer enforcing all the laws related to the environment. And that's part of my background. Here I am today, still working with the raptors. I did retire in 2001 from my regular job, but I'm not retired from taking care of birds. This is a great horned owl here. These are the carrying boxes that I use. Hey, come on. Hey, come on out. There. Oh, I know.
Oh.
This is a great horned owl. He's permanently injured. This bird has problems with both wings. And some of the birds that come in, if they can't be released back to the wild, I try to tame them down as best as possible and use it for education. I never consider them my pets. I never name them. I think it's a disservice to wildlife to go into a classroom with an owl like this, for instance, and say this is Hootie the owl, or give them some silly name. I just call them exactly what they are. This is the American great horned owl. And I used this bird last night at the festival, and I brought some birds in to show the people what they look like up close. And of course, this bird gets its name for the tufts on the top of his head. That's the second smallest owl. That's the eastern screech owl. This is the red phase. They have two color phases, the red and the gray. The red is not as common as the gray phase. If you look at the screech owl, you saw the great horned owl a few minutes ago. If you look at the screech owl, basically it looks like a miniature great horned owl. And believe it or not, I've had this bird 14 years. He's really an old timer. Also, it's interesting if you notice the tufts of feathers on the top of the head. Most people think those are his ears. They are called ear tufts, but the bird uses those ear tufts for camouflage. If you picture this bird against a tree, that's the screech owl. Yeah, he's screeching too. It's a Harris hawk. I don't know if you want to see this, but this bird, he's building a nest inside his box. And you can see he's ripping all the paper up. You can see he's down inside the box, and he's building a nest. Okay, come on. Hi, how are you? Yep, this is the Harris hawk, and he's another bird. This bird is more of a southwestern species. They come from Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California. And a lot of these birds are brought into this area for the sport of falconry. And also a lot of them are brought here illegally. And it's not a native species. But he's quite compared to some other hawks, he's quite a hunter. Real long legs. He's got very short wings and a long tail, and this gives this bird the ability to go through the brush and trees to catch its prey. So this is called a Harris hawk. And this bird's got a problem with one eye. He's only suitable basically for educational programs. And he was with me all day yesterday, and I'm sure he's going to enjoy being back in his roomier cage.
So you say he's native to Arizona. Is that throughout the state of Arizona?
Yes,
or?
yeah.
Okay.
Most of Arizona, Texas, all through the southern, and all the way down into South America.
What is the type of habitat they knew? Like, is it more desert type? Or?
Yeah, cactus areas, scrub forests, that type of thing. And they basically they'll nest on old cactus and also in small trees in the middle of the prairie or the desert. And they're a very sociable bird. One of the very few birds of prey that will nest in a family group and basically take care of each other's young. When one's away, it's not uncommon for the other one to feed the young in another nest. So Harris hawk is a very family-oriented, so to speak.
So what do they feed on?
They're mostly mammals, rabbits, prairie dogs, that type of thing, mice, a lot of mice. And they will also take birds, anything like that. Sometimes even insects. If they're pressed and there's not much food around, they're an opportunist. They'll take basically anything they can find, but mostly mammals.
So how did you acquire this one? Someone had got it illegally?
Yeah, well, I've had this bird for a long time. I still practice the sport of falconry, and some of the birds I used to use in the sport, Harris hawks and falcons, I still have a few around. This bird was one I used for quite a while until its eye was injured, and so it couldn't be released back to wild. This was given to me. The thing is, a lot of these birds are bred in captivity now. A lot of breeders are actually breeding them. Just like I've been breeding bald eagles here for many years. But my focus is to get them back to the wild. Many of these birds were bred for the falconry trade, where they could be purchased online if you had the proper permits.
When do hawks hunt?
When?
Like is it at night,
No,
daytime?
hawks are diurnal, which means they hunt during the daytime. Owls are nocturnal, hunt at night. This bird, usually as soon as the crack of dawn, as soon as that sun comes up, they're on the wing, especially when they've got young to feed. But they'll hunt all day. They'll take mice throughout the day. Well, owls will start hunting just at dusk until early morning. And most people think that owls are blind in the daytime. That's false. Hey, relax. That's false. Owls can see very well in the daytime, and some hawks, like the Harris hawk, they can see pretty good at night. Guesses, and that's the way I can control the bird without having him fly off or do something I don't want him to do. So the guesses help to control him. Yeah, she's been here about 13 years. That bird hit a power line and lost the use of one wing, never healed properly. So she can't fly, and the male, he's back in the corner, he can't fly either. So you notice there's no top on the cage because they can't get off the ground more than a couple of feet. But it's a pair of birds I use for captive breeding, and hopefully they'll lay eggs in the spring, which they do, and I'll release the young back to the wild. So this has been a very productive pair of bald eagles. Of course, we know this is the national bird, and here in Massachusetts, we lost the nesting birds until about 1985 when they started to come back, because some of the birds were lost because of pesticide contamination. But the population is doing really quite well right now. You thought I had a fish farm. Come here. Come here. No fish today. Come here. Come here. Good guy. Come on. Come over. Hi. Hi. Come on. How are you? How are you? My buddy. My buddy. My buddy. They sure get to know you after a while. Good boy. Good boy.
So, as far as, I don't think they know it's a national bird in that, but I don't think they have like a lot of information about the eagle's habitat, when they feed, what they feed on, how many times a year do they breed, how many chicks.
Right. Well, to answer that question, once a year, they breed once a year, and they usually have 1 to 3 eggs, and usually 2. But sometimes in the wild, only 1 or 2 chicks survive because of the food supply. And the bald eagle, and incidentally, it's called a bald eagle because it's white head. Bald means white, and you can see he's not bald. But they will hunt fish, other birds and animals, but their main diet is fish. But in the wintertime, when the rivers and lakes freeze up, they'll resort to catching ducks, and even carrion. They'll feed on dead things. I picked up several over the years that were hit by automobiles on the side of the road because they were feeding on carrion.
Like crows, they can feed
Yeah,
on carry
they
on,
sure
that
can.
type of thing.
Yep. Yeah, this is the American kestrel, and you could tell the male from the female with this bird by the color. That's a little male you're looking at. You see those gray shoulders and wings? That's the male. If that was a female, her body would be all kind of a chocolate brown color. Unfortunately, the kestrel, and we used to call this a sparrowhawk years ago, the kestrel is in trouble today because of loss of habitat. And the state is really concerned about its ability to survive in this area because of no nesting places. And right now they're putting up a lot of nesting boxes to encourage this bird to come back. They are a cavity nester, which means they do not build a nest. They find a hole in the tree or a bird box, and they'll go in and raise their family. It is a falcon.
So what is their habitat?
Open pastures, meadows, farms. Because we're losing a lot of the old family farms that housed a lot of these birds. You'll still find them in areas nesting in the barns of some of the old farms that are still available in the valley here, but not in the numbers they used to be. They're getting pretty scarce.
And part of it too has to be with major developments.
Exactly.
Like you said, sell a
Yeah.
farm and then you get a developer putting stuff up. So normally, what would they eat?
The kestrel is mostly an insect and a mouse hunter, but they will take small birds in the wintertime, but mostly mice, insects of different types. Grasshoppers are one of their favorite meals.
So what do you feed them?
I feed them mice mostly. I mentioned before about the pellet. They have to form that pellet. So I feed mice. And I've got about 65 birds here right now. And boy, let me tell you, I go through a lot of mice.
So how did you end up with this bird?
This guy is about ready to be released. He's doing really well. He had a fractured wing, which healed very well. And you can see he's doing real good. So hopefully I'll release him. If the weather holds out and we get a nice mild fall, I'll turn him loose. You know, he just found something in his box. He's got it in his feet. I don't know if it's a mouse I fed him yesterday or... So basically what happens is the federal government can declare an animal endangered or take it off the endangered species list, but a state can keep it on if they feel that their population in a given state is not what it should be. And there's three categories that the guidelines for the federal government. The first is birds of special concern. That's the lowest category. Boy, you better watch them because it looks like there's going to be trouble. The second category is endangered is the first, and then special concern is the last, and in the middle we call threatened. So you go from one category goes to threatened, and then to endangered, which is the top priority. That's what the birds are really protected. So special concern, threatened, endangered. The bald eagles and the peregrine falcons are off the endangered species list, but some states still have them on the endangered list, or as Massachusetts, special concern, where we're still monitoring all the nesting pairs.
So this is a red-tailed hawk?
Yeah, that's an immature. Doesn't have a red tail yet.
And how long does it take for a red-tailed hawk to get?
1 year.
1 year.
The first year, so that bird was born this year. Next year, its tail will start to change to red color.
So what's his injury?
His wing, his left wing.
Ah.
It looks like it's not broken. It might be just a muscle pull. But like I said, he just came in yesterday. I haven't really had a chance to really look at him yet.
So do you have a vet that can take a look at him?
Yeah, I have a Dr. Schmidt in Deerfield, who was really a great guy, and he helps me with a lot of the birds. There's a large enclosure in back of this wall, and there's a couple of owls, a couple of great horned owls in that cage back there. Those are birds that are really wild. They're going to be released pretty soon. And this is a way of keeping them nice and quiet. They don't see me feed them. They don't have any human interference. And I just drop the food in that door. And when I'm ready to take the birds out, I just enter through another door, take the birds out, band them, and release them back to the wild.
Now you mentioned banding them. Can you be more explicit? Like the bands have a certain number,
Yes.
And then and like if someone sees the bird with the band, I mean, what do they actually do studies on these?
Yes, they do. There's two types of bands. There's a federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife band that I put on the birds. It has a special number, and that number is recorded so that the bird can be identified later on. For instance, if a bird is found a couple of years from now, they can check that band number and find out where the bird came from. Now, in the case of the bald eagles, when I band the bald eagles, I place a federal band on one leg and a copper-colored band on the other leg, and the copper-colored band is a state band. Tells exactly what state the bird came from. That's an immature bald eagle. That's about about a
Oh,
4-year-old
okay.
bird.
That's what an immature bald eagle
Yep.
looks like. Oh, no, that is awesome.
You can see the white starting to come into the head
Yeah.
and the tail. Now next year, he should be solid white
All right, I
on the
gotta do
head
it
and
this way.
tail. And also, you'll notice the bill, the beak, is black, and that's changing to yellow like the adults. Now his wing, when he came in, his wing was pretty well distorted. It was broken and it healed so that it was hanging down almost under his leg, and he just was immobile. He couldn't move at all because of that wing. So the best advice was to take that wing off.
Now, when the eggs hatch, is it the female or male that goes out to get the food to bring back to the chicks?
For the first few days, of course, when the female's incubating, the male does most of the hunting. Once the chicks are hatched, the female guards the nest, and the male still does most of the hunting. Once the chicks are able to be left alone, if they're a little bigger, then both parents will help bring food into the nest, but they're very, very cautious about leaving the young in the nest alone, because crows, ravens, vultures, seagulls will take the young out of a nest. So the adults wait until they're pretty large, then they'll both start hunting.
So, when is the point when they can leave? Well, when they can leave the chicks, but then the chicks can sort of like fend for themselves.
They'll start leaving the chicks when the chicks are probably a couple of weeks, 2 weeks old, in the nest. And the chicks will probably fledge after about 3 months, but they stay with the adults, usually during the summer. When the adults catch food, they'll feed the young still when they're on the wing. And then after a while, the adults will leave them alone, let them fend for themselves. But they usually stay together in groups. Very rarely you see a young eagle alone. They're usually with an adult. But they're very slow to mature as far as being able to catch food. It takes a long, long time. You know, a lot of people get it mixed up with the golden eagle. People see a first-year bird is just all chocolate brown, and a lot of people think it's a golden eagle, which looks almost identical, but there are, of course, a lot of differences. But after the second year, they start to get a little white. Third year, a little more. Fourth year, like this guy, a lot more. And next year, he should be just about white. When he molts, of course, he'll molt his feathers, and the new feathers coming in will have a lot of white on them. To become a wildlife rehabilitator, you have to go through a process with both the state Fish and Wildlife and federal Fish and Wildlife. And that entails taking a written exam on different functions, building a facility that has to be inspected by an officer to tell whether it's feasible to keep certain birds, whether you want to work with raptors, songbirds, reptiles, mammals. After you pass that exam, and incidentally, I should back up, you have to have a sponsor also, someone that will vouch for you or will be there to help you in a crisis or when you need a problem solved. So you have to have a sponsor to act as sort of a guide. Once all these requirements are met, if you pass the exams, then a license will be issued from the state and the federal government. But it's still very strict. You'll be inspected periodically, and at the end of the year, you have to put in an annual report showing what came in, what was euthanized, perished, released, etc. So they keep a very, very tight lid on the whole process. And it's good because you're taking a big responsibility by taking care of these animals, a real big responsibility. And I've been working with bald eagles for about 40 years now, and I still get excited when I have to rescue an animal like the bald eagle. And the big reward is when you take that bird out and release it back to the wild. So basically, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of fun, and but it has to be done right.
Tell me about barred owls, because I know that they're native around here, or
Yep.
you can really
Yeah,
find
they're
them
native.
around here.
They're one of the most common of all the owls.
Now, vultures, what kind of habitat do you normally see vultures? And are they throughout this? I know you have vultures sort of like down in the southwest,
Yep.
but you find them here.
That's a peregrine. You can notice the coloration, but he's getting them gray feathers in. That's a juvenile bird going into the adult plumage. This is the silver gerfalcon, and they come in 3 different colors: black, silver like this one, and a white phase.